Joe, good morning, sir. Legal analyst and former U.S. attorney. Nice to have you.
Good morning.
Okay, so.
He's very calm.
I know, it's the calm before the storm. The IG report comes out yesterday. Is this worse than you thought, or is exactly as expected?
Oh, I think this is extremely disappointing. It has a sense of cognitive dissonance about it. It doesn't make any sense based on the facts that were known and the new facts that come out of it that are now known. I must say that I thought the reaction of Trey Gowdy, who was alarmed, angry, and disappointed, he deserves what he got based on his view recently that the Bureau did everything by the book concerning the informant that was put into the Trump presidential campaign. I think that the IG is either very naive or just didn't want to go the distance. The notion that there was no political bias shown either by Comey or whoever else he might have felt that way about is simply ludicrous. And I think that what we've seen, I will say this about the report, the line that was taken out of the material that was shown to Congress and then showed up in the report where I guess it's Strzok who says we'll stop him, meaning Trump. I don't know what the members of Congress thought was going to happen when they're not being shown basic documents. So my view of this is it's almost a nothing burger as far as I'm concerned, because what matters now is if the Congress continues to be ridden roughshod over by the Bureau and Rod Rosenstein, it won't make any difference how angry they get. And I'll say this, that Chris Wray news conference yesterday was a Monty Python joke. Here he is standing up, the worst political embarrassing situation in history, and Chris Wray is going to give training. Well, guess what? The training that's needed is for the people at the upper echelon, not the people out in the field. I mean, that was an embarrassing performance by Chris Wray. There's a guy who's running the greatest law enforcement agency in the world, and he has no command presence. So all in all, yesterday was an awful day for people who care about good government, whether it was Horowitz's naive report or Chris Wray's embarrassing performance. It was an ugly day for people that believe in good government and good law enforcement.
You know, Joe, I'm sitting here going through the papers trying to find it because I have so much on this report. But correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure, wasn't President Obama's name redacted from this report and put in instead as a senior official?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Why redact his name if everybody knows who it was?
Well, why redact lawyer number two?
Mm-hmm. Right.
This lawyer that made some awful remarks. Why isn't he named? These are public officials. We pay their salaries. Why aren't they named? This is absolutely absurd. But see, this is what happens when you don't do oversight correctly and you just don't know how to fight. I give Nunez an A+. I give the rest of them up there D- at best.
You know, one of the things that has really stuck out to me is the relationship between FBI officials and reporters. Dozens of FBI officials, unnamed in this, but are said to have received bribes from reporters in the forms of sport tickets, dinners, access to non-public events, and in return have maintained constant communications despite not being authorized in any way to communicate with the press. The IG is saying this has made it very difficult to establish who was the specific person behind a variety of leaks at the FBI. The culture there on that leak question seems like it's in trouble.
Well, I think the Bureau will never be able to fix this as long as you have people like Chris Wray at the helm. This is not a manager. This is not a guy who understands what the stakes are. When you get up and you give a news conference like that, which was a total embarrassment for the director of the FBI, what you're doing is you're sending a signal to the troops that you're not serious. And I can only say that whatever their problems are with their relationships with reporters, that is not going to change. Chris Wray didn't say anything about that during his news conference. He didn't say a word.
Yeah.
Joe, were you shocked by some of the language that came out of this? One of the employees writing, Trump supporters are all poor to middle class, uneducated, lazy POS that think he will magically grant them jobs for doing nothing. They probably didn't watch the debates. They aren't fully educated on his policies and are stupidly wrapped up in his unmerited enthusiasm. And also, another one went on to use the word to call Ohio voters, quote unquote, retarded. Is this the way that people speak in the FBI about American citizens?
It never used to be that way when I was a federal prosecutor and U.S. attorney. I am absolutely shocked by the language of these people. You didn't hear Chris Wray say a word about it yesterday. He doesn't understand how serious this situation is. And this nonsense about training people. Good Lord, it sounds like the former CEO of Starbucks, for God's sakes. You're not running a coffee shop here, Chris. You're running the world's premier law enforcement agency. What that shows, that language, Mary, that you referred to, shows an incredible lack of discipline inside the Bureau, no management, but even worse, a tolerance by management of attitudes like that. I hope that when the Mueller investigation is over, the President of the United States, and I intend to talk to him about this eventually, not while North Korea is going on and all that stuff. I think Chris Wray has to go. I think Rosenstein has to go. I think Rosenstein clearly has a conflict of interest in so many areas which he refuses to recognize. I just think a bunch of people have to go. These problems are never going to get any better as long as people like Chris Wray and Rod Rosenstein are in charge.
All right, well, we have much more with Joe Digenova. I want to ask him about the way the Hillary Clinton investigation was actually conducted, and also about Bob Mueller.
The new news is what happened with the Inspector General leak yesterday. We find out from ABC News that it looks like Jim Comey is going to be labeled as someone who defied authority, was insubordinate, and Loretta Lynch gets some criticism, too, for her meeting on the tarmac with Bill Clinton. Now, Bill O'Reilly tweeted out something that I had also thought about. He said, well, if this is it, if this is all they have, that's not going to be some big nirvana for the pro-Trump people who thought that this IG report was going to deliver some incredible result. Insubordination and, Loretta Lynch, should have done things differently on the Bill Clinton conversation. Is that really all we've been waiting for? Joining us now is Joe Digenova, former U.S. attorney for D.C., partner at Digenova and Tenzing, his firm he founded with his wonderful wife, Vicky. Joe, it's good to talk to you. Let's talk about this IG leak. What do you think about O'Reilly's point that this might be a sign that there's not enough there for any real momentum?
Well, we have to remember that the Inspector General doesn't have the power to conduct grand jury investigations, doesn't have subpoena authority, can't interview people who've left government. Anybody who talks to him voluntarily if they've left government, as opposed to the FBI officials who were still on the payroll and were forced to talk to him, like Page and Strzok, Priestap, and others. I have never been expecting much from this report other than what has been leaked. And what I thought has to happen is now there has to be a grand jury. There has to be a grand jury investigation into the way in which the FBI and the Justice Department conducted the Hillary Clinton interview. Did it violate the law? Were there violations of not only policy, but criminal statutes? Was there a type of collusion between the defense team and others which corrupted the investigative process? If it doesn't get into that, if it doesn't say that the investigative process was totally corrupted, then it's useless. I do expect it to say that the investigative process of Hillary Clinton was corrupted by Comey and DOJ officials. Whether or not those were crimes remains to be seen. I don't know the answer to that. That would require a federal grand jury. I don't think Rod Rosenstein will ever authorize one because he does not believe that DOJ officials ever violate the law. They may, do misjudgments and things like that, but I have no confidence in Rod Rosenstein. I mean, he's just, one of the reasons that Trey Gowdy and Paul Ryan have engaged in this ludicrous notion that there was no spying on the Trump campaign is that Gowdy actually had lunch with Rosenstein a couple of weeks ago at a Washington restaurant. And